Welcome to Improve Your Tests with the Python Mock Object Library. My name is Christopher, and I will be your guide. This course is about the unit test mock library. You'll be learning about writing unit tests, how to stub out code with the mock class, how to control mock's behavior to mimic real code, and how to use a specification to help error-proof your mocks. The code in this course was tested with Python 3.14.2. The mock library was added in Python 3.3, so any currently supported Python version should be sufficient to code along. Sometimes your code needs to interact with external resources, like making calls over the network, interacting with a database, or working with large files. When you write a unit test for this kind of code, you might not want that kind of interaction to happen. It might make the performance of your unit test too sluggish, or it might make it difficult to have deterministic behavior. For example, if each network call returns a different result, testing for appropriate values becomes more difficult. Instead, you can fake out these kinds of interactions using the unittest.mock module. This module contains classes that allow you to dynamically replace code with a fake version. And when using a fake version, you can control the response, giving you fast, deterministic tests. In the next lesson, I'll dive right in and demo the mock class, the key to faking things out in your test. In the previous lesson, I gave an overview of the course. In this lesson, I'll introduce you to the M mock class, which is key to dynamically faking code interactions. In the overview, I mentioned that sometimes when testing your code, you don't want all the code's actions to happen. One way to deal with this is through the unittest.mock module, which contains tools to dynamically replace your real code with fake equivalents you can use and control in your tests. The key mechanism to do this is the mock class. Instances of this class dynamically create methods as you call them, meaning any method call you make on the class succeeds. You can further configure mock to control the response from these methods, allowing you to fake out any Python object. On top of that, there are also mechanisms for checking what got called. This way, you can replace your code with a mock, have it succeed because any method call is allowed, then ensure that the code invoked those methods it was supposed to. Let's head to the REPL to learn more about mocking your code. Before faking out some code, let me just start by playing around with the mock object. I need to import it. And now I'll instantiate it. As I said before, you can call any method on a mock object and it will work. Calling sayHello returns a new instance of a mock object which stores the fact that you called a method on it. There's nothing special about sayHello. Any method I call will return a new instance with data about what has been called. Of course, a mock object is still a Python object, so I can assign values. Note that this is different from what I was doing before. Here, I'm treating it like a regular Python object. You don't typically do this, but if you need to add things to the object before it gets used by your code, you can. Let me show you the difference. Now I'm going to use an attribute that doesn't exist. This time, it works differently. Instead of getting back an assigned value, it returns a new mock instance, like it did with the method calls. Alright, so you've got an object that will happily allow you to call anything on it. If you're using such an object to help with your tests, it will stop your test from calling the real thing and won't fail. But how will you know your code did what it was supposed to do? In addition to allowing you to call any method or access any attribute, mock also tracks what you did with those methods and attributes. You can then invoke assertions to see what happened. This might seem a little funky if you're not used to it, but everything in Python is an object, even method calls on an object. Of course, you can call a method, but you can also treat it like data and associate things with it. Like, in this case, other methods. Here, the sayHello method that I created by invoking it a minute before also has a child assertion method. Notice that the REPL didn't do anything here. Recall that an assertion that passes does nothing, which in this case is a good thing. If sayHello hadn't been called, then an exception would get raised. Let's do it again. There's my second call to sayHello. And there's more than one assertion you can use. The assert called once method asserts that a method only got called once. Since I called say hello twice, this assertion failed, resulting in the exception. The exception even tells you that the error happened because the method got called twice. Likewise, if I check for something I never called, I get an assertion error here as well. This tells me that did not was not called at all. To go along with checking something did get called, there are also methods to check that something did not get called. Let me call something new, this time with an argument. Same idea here, and a new variation on the assertion, this time checking that the method got invoked with a specific argument, which of course fails if I assert the call with a different argument. To go along with the assertions, there is also data you can access on the mock to see what happened. As you might guess, the call count attribute stores how many times something got invoked. The call args attribute shows you what argument got used during the last call, while call args list shows you all of the calls, which in this case was just the one. So far, the attributes I've been showing you are the ones on the newly created method. If you go up to the object itself, the method calls attribute shows you all the methods that have been invoked on the object, including their arguments. Now that you've got the idea, in the next lesson, I'll show you where you might use a mock object in your code. In the previous lesson, I introduced you to the mock class in the unittest.mock module. In this lesson, I'll show you how to configure mock to act like the code it is replacing. Previously, I showed you how to instantiate a mock object and how to assert what was or was not done to it. So far, though, you've only seen mock's methods return other mock objects. When faking out real code, you'll likely need the mocked methods to return something, like your code does. You want the mocked method to look like it behaves like the real one, returning values or raising exceptions as is appropriate. The mock objects provide ways to configure all of this. There are two common ways of using a mock object. The first is to create an object and pass it into your code. Your code then operates on the object, and your tests can then assert that the appropriate calls got made. There's an object-oriented coding pattern known as dependency injection. This pattern has you pass required objects into a function rather than have them created in the function itself. For example, you would pass a reference to an open file object rather than passing in a file name for the function to open itself. This pattern is more common in statically typed languages than in Python, but you will see it used in some frameworks. If your code is structured this way, the dependency that you inject could be a mock object when you're testing. The second common use of mock is to dynamically patch the code that you call, replacing a module or object underneath with a mocked version. In this lesson, I'll stick with the former, and in the later lessons, I'll show you the latter. You can't typically use this dynamic mechanism in statically typed languages, hence why you don't see dependency injection in Python as much, as there's other ways of solving the same problem. Alright, back to the REPL, this time to fake out some code. Before I use mock, let me write a bit of code to mimic. The path class from the pathlib module is used for interacting with file paths. It's a better abstraction than just a file name, as it's aware of things like directories, and you can do operations on it. Here, I've created a new path object that references a file named message.txt. Note that this file doesn't have to exist. You could use the path to create it. In this case, though, I have one. I've provided it in the sample code, but you could just as easily create it yourself. It only contains a single line of text. The readText method on a path object opens the corresponding file, interprets its contents as text, and returns that text as a string. If there was no messages.txt file, this would have resulted in an exception. Now that you've seen how this works, let me write a little function that uses this idea. The reader function takes an argument that it assumes is a path object. Then it calls read text on that object and prints out the contents of the file and the length of the content. If I pass in our previously created message path, these are the results I get. Let's see what's involved in faking out a path object. First, you start by importing mock. You know how at the state fair there's sometimes a contest where you guess how many jelly beans there are in a jar? Well, as a complete aside, let's do the programming equivalent. Guess how many times I'm going to use the word mock or its derivatives in this course. I'll count them up for you at the end. See how well you can guess. There, I instantiated my fake object. Notice I didn't say mock that time. I'm about to pass this on to our reader function. Take a second and predict what you think will happen. Is that what you expected? So just what happened here? Note where the failure occurred. The call to read text was fine. The mock object created the method on the fly as I showed you before. But remember, when you call a mock method, what you get is a new instance of a mock object. That new instance doesn't support the use of len, so the code there fails. If you really want to fake read text, you probably want to return a string like it does, not a new mock object. Well, mock lets you do that. In case you skipped the previous lesson, everything in Python is an object, even the methods. You can associate attributes with a method. The difference here is there aren't any parentheses, so the method isn't getting called. It's being treated like data. You can hard code a return value from a mocked method by setting the return_value attribute on the fake method, which is what I've just done here. The result is when the mock's version of read text gets called, it will now return the string faked instead of a new mock object. Let's try that out. And now, because a string came back from the call, the rest of the reader function works. By using the return value mechanism, you can fake out any method and hard code the result. If you were doing this inside of test code, you might also inspect the mock object as well, checking how it got invoked, for example, or using one of the assert methods discussed in the previous lesson. The mock object has several different ways of controlling what comes back from a method. You saw the return value mechanism, but you can also cause method side effects. The return value mechanism returns the given value when the method gets called. But what if you wanted to raise an exception? With the side effect attribute on a method, you can set an exception. Now, when the method gets called, this exception gets raised. Note that side effect takes precedence over return value, so if they're both set, like here, the side effect will be the one that fires. Because side effect was set to value error, this time when read text got invoked, the exception got raised. Side effects can be more than exceptions, though. When you set a side effect to an iterable, each call to the method returns the next value in the iterable. Note how this is different from return value. If you set return value to a list, you'd get back that list. Here, you're going to get back the first item in the list the first time you call the method, the second item the second time, and so forth. So 1, 2, 3, and boom. The fourth call raised an exception because there was nothing left in the side effect to iterate over. Side effect also has a third mechanism. It allows you to define a quick function. I'm using args and keyword args here so that anything that gets passed into the faked method can be passed into our side effect function. My side effect function doesn't do much. I'm just going to print out the calling args and then return a string. Now that I've populated the side effect with a reference to fake read text, I can now call the reader function again. Our side effect function got invoked. Since read text doesn't have any arguments, star args and star star keyword args were empty. But you can see that our fake function got called because the result was side effect function as a string rather than the hard-coded return value attribute from before. You can turn a side effect off by setting it to none. Once I turned the side effect off, the return value attribute is working once more. So far, I've been calling a method on a mock object, but you can also call the mock object itself. One advantage of doing it this way is you can configure the object in the constructor. Here, I've set both a return value and a side effect from the get-go. If I call the mock object directly, I get the value error raised as a side effect. If I none that out, now invoking it results in the 3 return value attribute configured in the constructor. You don't really use mock in the REPL or in standalone scripts. Usually you're using it inside of unit tests. In the next lesson, I'll do a quick tangent on Python unit test scripts in case you're not familiar. Then, in the lesson after that, I'll add mock back into the mix.